If the culture agrees with you, then you'd better rethink your life. There's a lot of things that we need others' agreement. I saw you break that dish. So-and-so saw it, and he agrees with me. We saw you do that. I know that I'm right because so-and-so heard this or so. There are times where we need others' agreement. But if we are looking at our lives, if we are gauging our thoughts and our opinions based on what others think, based on what the culture thinks, then you might be on the wrong side of an argument. Because remember, if God is one position and culture is another, if God versus Satan, and God gave Satan the world and God has everything else, Satan only has it for a time, the world is going to reflect Satan's views, and he does it in very, very subtle ways. For instance, many of you are pro-life because it's just the audience I get. Consider yourselves devout Christians or Catholics. And it's like, I do not agree with abortion. But I do believe it's okay in cases of rape or incest. Does the culture agree with that or not? If the culture agrees with you, you might want to rethink that. What about marriage? We talk about that all the time. If it's okay to get divorced. My culture agrees with me. It's okay to get divorced. But God, not in his law. Are you using the culture while everybody else is doing it? If the culture thinks your actions are good, you may want to rethink it. You may want to be on the side of the people saying, God says divorce is not acceptable. What about premarital sex? Does the culture accept that or not? Are you having sex because, other people are, no one thinks it's that big of a deal? Is the culture on your side or against you? Because if the culture accepts your actions, you might want to rethink it. What about all these children born outside of marriage? Because right now, more children are born outside of marriage than within. But we're in a culture that says that's okay. As long as you're not, aborting. Well, yeah, as long as you're not aborting. But if the culture says it's okay to do, you might want to rethink it. What about having an in vitro fertilization? See, I'm getting a little bit closer to the Christian core here, but it's good. I got this beautiful child. Culture says it's okay. Then you might want to rethink it. Because remember, everything in culture is run by Satan, goes against God. I know plenty of people that were born out of in vitro, but then I've also seen how that system can get twisted. Look at how many men, gay couples, are procuring children from a woman who they call a surrogate, who's really just their breeder, purchasing a child because they want to own one. I know my words are harsh, but we've got to look at what the culture agrees with and check yourself. Where is the culture in the Bible correct on anything? On anything. Unless a culture is a culture that is deeply following God and God's laws. So we're talking the entire culture, the people who make the laws. Culture is paradoxical to Christ's law. All I'm saying is, yes, there are times where I live in the same world, I live in the culture, but I don't define myself by the culture. And yes, there are going to be some people that agree with you. But you have the church on one hand, you've got the culture on the other. You need to fall to the side that is God's. And that isn't going to be easy. Almost never is that easy. The culture is the majority. The culture is owned by Satan. He has power over it. And he is so subtle. So subtle. that he even knows how to get Christians to think, well, this is okay. Everyone else is doing it. Does the culture approve of it? Fill in the blank. What do you do that you say, sure, God will understand. He knows me. He knows what I had to go through. Yeah, he does. And he'll still look at you and say, but I said this. And I know you were going through that. But you ended up listening to the culture and not me. And you didn't carry your cross because you kept thinking I should be the one to bend my perspectives for you. He will say, I love you. I love you and I want you in heaven with me, but you willfully did your own thing because you figured I'd just forgive it. How arrogant of us. Guys, we are coming to a very detrimental part of societal existence. We are coming on some dark times. This is the time where we need to steep ourselves in grace. You need not make a small decision that you think God wouldn't appreciate. Everything. I've been rethinking things like speeding. Is that a sin? To go 5, 10, 15 miles over the limit? Limit law usually lets you go 10 miles over, just under. Culture accepts that. So I have to rethink that, don't I? What would God want? Now, of course, if a law is going against God's laws, you always choose God's laws. But this is a time where I'm like, well, do we pay attention to man's laws? Who is your guide? God planted truth in our hearts, and it's not easy to be on the side of truth in a culture that wants anything but. Condoning someone's affair. You might be upset with your next door neighbor when he first leaves his wife for another woman, or when she leaves her husband for another man and says, he just always beat me, or he was a narcissist. You might be mad at them at first. You know how many family after family after family, all they need is time. And eventually, instead of standing and telling their sibling, their child, their neighbor, their whoever, no, whether you're 2, 3, 5, 10 years with that infidelity partner, it will always be wrong. Yet culture's gotten to where they accept it. Think about sexual things that I would not have conceived of as a child, things that people said, and I was like, what? Things, I didn't want to get into it because I'll probably get censored. Sexual things that are being so acceptable. The whole reason for that movie that Jim Caviezel and Tim Ballard just did. Think of that. People don't even see that as bad necessarily because they tried to say, well, children, or, they're 16, 17, they probably willingly do it. Prostitutes. I am so tired of the arguments where people say, well, prostitutes want to do it. No, they don't. No, they don't. If culture accepts prostitution, maybe you should be on the other side. If the culture accepts drug use, maybe you should rethink your stance. The culture is getting to think it's okay to legalize marijuana because it doesn't sound so bad. Might want to rethink it. That's all I'm telling you to do. Do not use majority. Do not use culture as your gauge. And I will say the opposite. If you're not being mocked or persecuted for your perspective, you're probably in line with the culture. You probably need some rethinking. All right, well, it's a tough one, but please be on the side of God. Carry your cross. Do what God would have you do. That's why it was so hard when Lot left Sodom and Gomorrah. They wanted him to do it. It was accepted by everybody. But he had to leave. When Noah had to go with the ark and his very small family, the culture thought he was weird. The culture thinks you're weird, then be weird. If the culture tells you you're delusional, then be delusional. Let God be your guide. Fix your focus on the minority, because in this world, Christ's followers are among the minority, because he said so himself. He said, many will go down the wide path, but that one leads to destruction. He said, very few will go down the narrow path. And that one's full of thorns and thistles. I got a lot of cuts on my arms, and I'm prepared to get a lot more because I'm staying on that path. And if I find myself walking the way of the culture, making it too easy, please help me rethink it. We're in this together. I'd love to hear your comments. Post them below. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon, and I want to thank you for watching another informational Bacon Bit. And I'd like to remind you, of course, always to live your life sunny side up.